The House is now done voting for now after failing to advance a defense spending bill for the second time this week. Right now, a possible shutdown looms. Multiple Republicans have broken with Speaker Kevin McCarthy to oppose the measure. McCarthy is struggling to unify his party to keep the government open. This all comes amid calls from some conservatives to oust him as Speaker. Sources tell CBS News the Office of Management and Budget will hold its first shutdown preparation calls with all federal agency heads tomorrow. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now. Scott, the House has failed to advance a defense spending bill for the second time. Looks like lawmakers are preparing to go home. Is this a crisis moment for McCarthy?
It is. This is a fundamental and pernicious problem and quite a moment here in Congress, which is racing toward that October 1st deadline to pass all the spending bills and avert a painful shutdown. And as it races, the U.S. House has just stalled. What collapsed on the House floor today is something that is so fundamentally easy for Congress traditionally that it's an ominous sign moving forward. It wasn't just a procedural vote. It was a procedural vote to move forward and fund the military. Funding the military is something that is popular and necessary in every district in America. It's the easy stuff. The Republicans couldn't muster all the votes they needed on a party line vote, and they're insisting on party line votes right now. So that bill failed. There's no firm schedule as the night began as to when to put it back on the calendar. There's nothing else on the calendar of the other bills that need to pass to avoid a government shutdown. No indication a continuing resolution to give themselves some more time, a snooze button of sorts, is going to pass the U.S. House. It's just stalled amid the race, Bob.
With lawmakers preparing to go home, what does that mean for Speaker McCarthy? Does that mean he wants them to just cool off a bit back in their districts? Is it just a simple whip count situation? He doesn't have the votes, or might as well let people go back to their districts?
That could certainly be part of it. I mean, there's certainly people who want to go home to tend to matters in their district with their constituents. It's also Yom Kippur on Sunday and Monday. There's a different issue, though, at play. You need to have enough support to recess, to go home. You have to have enough people who say, yeah, let's go back home, come back next week, give this another try. And it wasn't clear as the night began that there are a sufficient number of people willing to go home. So some of that's still in flux. And everybody's mindful of what awaits them. At this moment, the U.S. Congress has not passed any of the dozen appropriations bills needed to keep the government open. There hasn't been put on paper a continuing resolution to avert a shutdown that both parties will agree to. And they would have, 4 or 5 days beginning Tuesday after Yom Kippur to get that done? That's just impossible. So there's a realization, if not an expectation, the government shutdown is imminent. That means the idling of hundreds of thousands of federal workers. Bob, it means delays getting passports, visas, education benefits, VA benefits. It means many federal workers forced to stay on the job without a paycheck. And so many Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And the reality is, Bob, even though Republicans seem resigned to the fact they're going to get a lot of blame for this, everybody hurts politically. Everybody hurts in general during a shutdown. It's everybody's constituents who take a punch.
Let's listen to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy.
We talked about a lot of different things. I thought it was a very good, I thought it was a direct, I thought it was productive. I raised issues with them, we're very concerned about accountability.
Scott, take us inside the negotiations. What's McCarthy referring to?
Well, what's unique about these negotiations, based on what we've seen over the past couple decades here during standoffs and shutdowns, is in the majority party, for Republicans, every faction seems to have somebody at the table. The Freedom Caucus is in the room. The Freedom Caucus has ideas as to how to keep the government open without shutting down, and they seem to have reached a partnership with some of the more moderate lieutenants of Kevin McCarthy. That's distinctive. But they can't get the entirety of the Freedom Caucus in there. And with these narrow margins of just 4 or 5 votes to lose, there are holdouts. There are holdouts who have a big megaphone, a big platform, and have the ability to make a lot of noise through them when they hold out. And all of this is going to be a persistent problem unless or until Republicans view a bipartisan deal in the world of the possible. Now, the problem solvers, that group of Republicans and Democrats who try to bridge a middle ground, they've come up with a plan to have a continuing resolution before October 1st. It has some things Republicans like, a few things Democrats don't dislike. But at this point, leadership is still trying to get this done with Republican votes only. And at this point, on this day, after that simple vote collapsed, it doesn't appear that's in the realm of the possible.
What about the tensions inside the GOP on another front? Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Capitol Hill seeking support, especially from Republicans who are hesitant at times to offer more financial support for that U.S. effort abroad. Where does that stand? Has Zelensky, based on your reporting, been effective in making the case to those on the fence in the GOP?
It was quite a juxtaposition today, watching the optics of Zelensky's visit here at the Capitol side by side with the Republican leader in the Senate and the Democratic leader in the Senate, all at once speaking with one voice that this is important to do, that the U.S. has to aid the war effort to help Ukraine fight back Russia. But minutes later, and I do mean minutes later, there were members of the House who helped vote down that defense bill who said one of the reasons they did so was because they don't support the Ukrainian aid in the bill. So there is this faction of Republicans in the House and Senate who are unequivocal in their opposition to further spending. Nobody here supports Ukraine losing or Ukraine drying up in its resources. But there are certainly disagreements as to how to fund this, who should be funding it right now. Some Republicans think Europe could chip in more money, and U.S. taxpayers have dug deep in their pockets already. But those disagreements are manifesting themselves on the day Zelensky visits, 10 days before a government shutdown. And it's a symptom of a bigger problem. Relationships are fracturing at a moment fences need to be mended.
And quickly, Scott, finally, Speaker McCarthy has been threatened before by Congressman Matt Gaetz, politically speaking, in terms of holding on to the gavel in his speakership. As you talk to members of the House GOP, what's your read on whether McCarthy is actually vulnerable of losing his position in the coming months?
Let's start with Congressman Gaetz. I spoke with him. He says there are now multiple motions to vacate, motions to challenge Speaker McCarthy circulating. There's no date certain on bringing them. A bipartisan agreement to keep the government open might expedite that. But, Bob, there still remains this fundamental reality that has helped Kevin McCarthy since January. There's no name circulating as an alternative, and you can't beat something with nothing.
Scott MacFarlane, as ever, opening his notebook for us here on America Decides. Thank you, Scott. We appreciate it.